talked a lot about thinking and the thinking mind. This reading beautifully and eloquently sort of points out that the thinking mind is transformed, and that there's two different qualities of the thinking mind. By Stephen Schwartz, when the truth of love comes, when the real intimacy arises between human beings and the universe itself, that intimacy and truth are felt. They aren't known conceptually. They arise through the body. And so when we speak of turning to God, when we speak of turning to the Infinite One, when we talk of ending separation, there may be ideas, and hopefully those ideas serve as an inspiration to go on. But the real prayer, the real movement, is one in which we turn the attention to the body. Because it is in the body, and only in the body, that the bliss of union is going to be felt, and not in the mind. In some very real sense, the mind is totally transformed by a return of the attention to the heart. It becomes a different instrument altogether. It isn't gone, but the function we have assigned to the mind in our separated state is no longer a useful function at all. The oppressive veil of thought dissolves. And in its place, we find that the eyes open into the spaciousness of the heart. The ears open into the spaciousness of the heart. The tongue, the sense of touch, all life, instead of being filtered through a sensory mechanism caught in thought, redesigned, then experienced, is suddenly experienced directly through the heart. And it does not encounter density, but rather encounters a lucid, open space which nothing is caught in definition. Nothing is caught in the past. Nothing is caught in the confines of imposed reality, but is rather allowed to move and change. This reading for me is absolutely central and core to everything that we are doing here. Everything that we are doing here. When the mind is caught in the separated state, then everything else, everything I do, everything I respond, how I live, is a function of that separated state. It's a function of the felt sense of tension that I feel, separation that I feel from myself, from the openness, from the reality of my very being, and to life itself. And so, the work that we come to over and over again, the work of attending to experience, attending to, meaning drawing our awareness, drawing our attention in a particular way to our inner experience over and over again, until eventually we begin to loosen the grip that our mind has on our life energy and our consciousness. The thinking mind that is bound through life experience, through traumatic experience, through the profound conditioning. We begin to loosen, it begins to loosen its grip on us. We begin to feel the ability to move. It begins to create in us a sense of spaciousness. We feel looser, freer. I can move. My life flow can move. There's more space. The profound and intense gravitational pull, magnetic pull, that the thinking mind has on consciousness is absolutely amazing. And we say, well, why is it so hard for me to live fully, for me to live without fear? This is the task, and it's not easy, you know. I wish it was easy. I mean, I think it would be like my work would be a lot easier. My life would be easier. Everyone's life would be easier. But it is what it is. And part of the approach to this work, to an internal liberation, so that I can live in life in a liberated state with you and with all of life, and so that we can all do that, this is a crucial element. There is a shift that takes place when I, in my experience of life, attend to my own thinking mind, attend to the constriction and the binding effect that that has on my very life energy, attend to it in a certain way that creates the conditions for liberation of this process. And in order to do that, it requires that I turn my attention in a very different way to my inner experience. The gravitational pull is that I want to turn my attention out there, or out there in a sort of internal blaming way also. The problem is not me. The problem is you're not listening to me. That's the problem. But if I could only throw some words at you in a certain way to get you to hear me, then maybe that would fix the problem. The problem was not you, it's me. Because I'm not enough, because I'm scared, or I'm not brave enough, or I don't have the skills. That way of turning the mind into myself as the reason for the problem is still the same thing. It's still the same game. And so this is what we're going to approach today. The principle is there's an inner skill, an inner capacity, an inner awareness that is developed over and over again, that through practice. And this skill is this, you know, it's so easy that it's elusive, because I think you all understand it intellectually. It's the self-recognition of the generation of thought, and that it's my thought. It's my thought. It's not out there. It has nothing to do with what's going out there, other than it's linked in some way, and I link it. There is what is. I observe an experience, an event, and that observation is evaluation free. But my training and the immersion of my conditioning pushes me into an immediate evaluation. Through my thoughts, I say, this is wrong, this isn't working, I don't like it, you're irresponsible, I'm irresponsible. My mother made me do it. If she had just been more loving, she's the reason why I'm such a mess, etc., etc. And notice there's a generation of thought that creates its own world. And that's the binding effect. And so the simple recognition, it's so simple I'm hesitant to even say it, because there's a distinction between the intellectual recognition, where we all say, oh yeah, I know that. I know this is my thought, this is my judgment. So even though I can say, yes, I know I'm judging, I'm still bound by it. My energy is still caught up in it. I still act as if it is real and not a judgment. So it's, when I say recognition, it's a felt recognition. It's a recognition of saying, okay, I'm aware. This is my awareness of life, of what is, of an experience, an event, a something that I or someone else said or did. There's this. And then something happened, and I've been all caught up all morning, going through my head. what should I do about this? Am I going to say this? Am I going to do this? And what do they mean by what they said? And I'm worried about that. And I go on and on and on and on with this narrative. And then if I'm actually able to own this, and there's different language that I use for this. Self-responsibility is the principle. And I'll define more of what I mean by this. It's more of an ownership. True ownership. I recognize on this fundamental level that I'm engaged in this generation of thought and thinking and evaluation and constant narrative about an experience. And it's an amazing recognition when I achieve it. I had that experience this morning. I read an email, and I'm not going to go into the content of it because it almost doesn't matter right now. I read an email, and it had implications, even though it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at a pool of people that received this email. But then I feel this gut response, and of course my mind tells me that it is about me personally, that this person is talking about me because I fall under the category of these people that this person is talking about. And then I have this ongoing talk within me. Sometimes it's very subtle, but it takes, and sometimes I register it only as worry or concern because that's the energy. But if I listen and pay attention, I notice, boy, I'm having this whole conversation with myself. I'm talking to myself constantly about what just happened. And then there's a kind of very subtle, very kind of, it slips up on me every once in a while, and I go, oh, wow, I see. I'm creating this whole inner world by the story I'm creating within myself. A scenario, what if I said this to them? What if they said that? No, they're going to react, but I don't know what the right thing to say is. I'll say this. No, I'll just take a stance. I'll just say, doesn't bother me. Then I go on and on and on, creating this whole inner drama, this whole inner story. All the while, not necessarily knowing that I have surrendered my life energy, given my life energy almost automatically to this narrative, to this reactive story that's going on. And then, because I have practiced this principle, and I know when I'm caught up in thought, because my body tells me, because I feel tense, anxious, worried. And so the skill, this basic skill is, this is my story, I hear it, my narrative, this is the thinking that's going on in this consciousness. And immediately when I say that, there's always the awareness of the actual event. And then when I tune into the actual event by itself, just by itself, the starkness of it, the simplicity of it, it may carry some energy and intensity because of the energy that's inherent in the event itself, but that's all part of the event. That's all part of that stimulation. But even by itself, it is what it is. I see that, I go back to that over and over again. It is what it is. This observation, this felt experience is what it is. And then wow, and look what I'm adding to it. I'm adding to that. Now whether the challenge is that I'm not always aware because it is an automatic, self-generated reaction. I find myself lost in the reactive thought about life. But then the skill is to catch myself. This is the skill, to catch myself, awareness. The event, this is the story about it. Watch it, this is the story, yes? But then there's a part of my mind that's this is a part that's really kind of sneaky, seductive. It says, I don't want it to be a story, I want this to be true. I'm convinced that the story is a reflection of what is actually so. This person is selfish, they don't care, etc. Or they think they know it all. They are arrogant. Yeah, that's true. You can't tell me that I'm making up this story. So there's this part of the mind that it's like a dog with a bone. Now, okay, it's a little story, I'm making it up, blah, blah, blah. Go back to it. Don't take this bone away from me. So, you know, it's dangerous. The power of the dog with a bone is amazing, because there's a sense of this righteousness in it. And it's connected to pain. That's the trick. It's connected to some pain that even then I don't fully own. So I want to own my thinking. I want to own my pain. In order to own my pain, I need to be open to it, to feel it. It's open, meaning I'm vulnerable to it. But through my anger, I stay with it long enough. Through my sense of indignation, I stay with that long enough. I go, okay, what am I feeling in a softer, vulnerable state? I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared that what this person says, that maybe I will be found out. Maybe I will be accused. I'm scared. That is my feeling. And when I say that is my feeling, and I actually authentically can feel it, on a feeling level, this is what I call self-responsibility for my feelings. I own it, I feel it as mine. It arises through my heart, through my vulnerability. It is my pain in relationship. So I'm working on recognizing the story, the thoughts that are generated in relationship to what happened. I want to also recognize through eventually loosening up the hold, becoming a little bit more vulnerable and open, and that willingness, and feeling the feeling that I'm feeling emotionally. It can be very tricky, because some of the emotional feelings are mixed in with blame, mixed in with the story. So I say, I feel rejected. And so in that experience, I want to tell myself, well, when I say I feel rejected in that experience, what am I feeling? What's the feeling in the body? All right, I don't exactly know what it is, but I'm a little worried, scared about it, because it's kind of strong. It's a little bit more vulnerable. I don't know what the feeling is, but I'm shaky. Then I'm entering into experience in a way that I loosen up my defendedness. That I loosen up eventually, not pushing myself into it, but I loosen up the protectiveness that my entire internal system is patterned and deeply conditioned into. Then I also, this is all at once, and then there's the sensation of my reaction, of my living reaction in response to what happened. This is attentiveness. This is an inner sensitivity that I'm developing. Because what I've learned to do is not to be sensitive. What I've learned to do is to react. React. I feel tense. I react. What is that reaction? I run away. I go do something. I go drink a beer. Even what appears to be something that could be soothing, I'll go on a walk. But what do I do with the sensation as I'm walking? Am I attending to it? So this is all this practice of attending to the incredible richness and depth of this inner experience. And each one of the dimensions of the story, the narrative, the thought, the emotionality, the sensations, all of these are simultaneously running through my inner being. And everything in me that I've learned draws me away from this and into the projection of what's going on. And all the good reasons why I ought to manage it and control it and avoid it, or stand up for myself, or draw my boundaries. All of those strategies. So this simple practice of self-responsibly owning my inner world is this fundamental practice. So I'm just sharing with you the basics, the principles of this. Because it's essential for what follows from this. Because if I want to be in authentic relationship with another person, I want to be available to them, that I'm more directly and authentically receiving and expressing what's real in me. The more I do that, the more we have a full, mutual being with one another. Because if I'm in a reactive state with my story, I actually am blind to them. I don't see them. It's filtered through my story. Because I believe in my story. I'm actually hypnotized by my story. It's a hypnotic trance. My story's subtle, so if I need to catch it first. My story is, oh, they don't care about me. And as long as my story is they don't care about me, almost everything that comes through that filter is filtered through they don't care about me. And even if they express true care, I don't really believe it. I don't really trust it. I can't really let it in. Because I know they don't care about me. Because the deeper story is that I'm not worthy. Or that you can't trust people. So until I'm able to, through the self-responsible ownership, through this sensitive recognition of what is generated in my own consciousness in relation to life, I will not be able to inhabit the space that receives you. Receives you, receives your energy, receives your life force, receives you. Because there's too much density. There's no room for you. So if I want to one of the things that's been helpful, if I want to truly be available to you, I want to heal my inner pain, my inner story. I want to create the spaciousness, and the way I do that is, one of the ways I do this, is by this awareness, directing awareness to the inner narrative, becoming vulnerable to my actual vulnerable feeling. Always being sensitive to the physicality of my body as the receptor of energy. This is developing a very simple but profound awareness of self-responsible ownership of inner experience. I'm making a distinction of self-responsible awareness and ownership of inner experience to self-responsible actions. They're linked, but I want to make that distinction. I also want to make a couple of distinctions, because sometimes I hear from people there's an association with the word self-responsible. You know, the word responsibility, I think, in the English language is tied in with blame. You know, if I'm responsible, it means it's my fault. I'm to blame. I'm responsible. That's not at all the meaning that I'm talking about, assigning blame. For me, when I assign blame, I'm not self-responsible. As long as I'm blaming, I'm engaging in a story that I haven't fully owned. So that's one differentiation I want to make. So the sense of real clarity of what responsibility is. The other one is, well, if I'm self-responsible for everything, then it means I have to do it all alone. That's another distinction. For me, that's not at all. Actually, that's also not self-responsible. Because if I truly get in touch with an authentic longing and desire of mine, that means I want to belong. That's my longing. I want to be with you and communicate, enter into this interdependent space. That is my longing. If I'm truly responsible for that, I reach out. I don't have to do it alone. I don't have to take care of everything myself. So there's this association that I want to clear up, that self-responsibility in no way means I have to do it all alone. It means I simply, truly own the life force as it's moving through me as mine, and I follow it and engage in relationship. I just want to pause here. Before we move into, I'm going to work with someone to demonstrate a guiding through the process of self-responsibility. Are there any responses or questions for clarity before we move into that? Just give space for a couple, maybe a couple, three. Everything's perfectly clear. Okay. Okay.
I really enjoyed the quote enormously, and you've made it all so much more explicit, but I just wondered if you could repeat the reading of Schwartz where he says the actual thing of something about seeing from the heart and listening, hearing from the heart, because that seems to me maybe something one could cultivate in a meditation. I'm not sure, but if you could get the process of hearing from the heart.
Yeah.
I mean, it does come when I do meditate a bit, but not enough, of course, in everyday life.
Yeah. You want me to read that quote again? It'll help you to connect.
There's just a little phrase. Yes, I'd love it if you would.
Yeah. It's the last paragraph or two. And I'll say something about it, I think. I don't know, this is my experience of this. And in its place, we find that the eyes open into the spaciousness of the heart. The ears open into the spaciousness of the heart. The tongue, the sense of touch. All life, instead of being filtered through a sensory mechanism, caught in thought, redesigned, then experienced, is suddenly experienced directly through the heart. Yeah. I imagine that this way of being, this consciousness, can be cultivated through meditation, meaning I'm sitting alone with my eyes closed. I imagine that is a way in which I can cultivate this consciousness of the heart. And maybe that resonates with some of you. What resonates more with me is that this is a meditation I want to carry with me in life, not sitting down, in the midst of life. This is my meditation. This is my pillow here. I'm moving. It's a moving meditation. So I feel, because this is life, it's dynamic, I feel the energy of life coming into me. Can I surrender my constant thinking about it and simply be vulnerable to feel the energies of life itself? Then it starts to awaken a completely different way of how my sense of touch is. How the more I do this, I got this recognition at one point where I said, wow, life is like super high definition. all those filters are gone. It's like everything is radiant. Of course, these are words describing, but the experience from which this comes is an expression of, well, through the heart, is that through all the filters that are relaxed. And I really allow the sensory richness of life to come into this being, not filtered through my mind. Then I catch myself, I've seen some beautiful natural, the sun is out, the sky is blue, and then I sit down and I go, how beautiful, and then I totally ruin it with that commentary. The mind is evaluating already how beautiful it is, instead of letting it in, feeling it, feeling the way this sensitive receiver, this instrument of life, how the energetic and living information is transmitted and how this instrument receives it. So for me, I want to cultivate this in life as the information is coming into me, so that I eventually am able to move from the perspective of life as particles of information, meaning thought, to life as waves of living information that comes into me. And we do this in relationship. Someone speaks to me, and I already notice, unconsciously, automatically, the disturbance of the energetic field in my body. There's something going on. My mind already automatically wants to clamp down on that. And it already says, they're wrong. Instead of allowing me to fully receive the information. Anyway, I could go on and on. And so, I'm sensitive to how the time that we have here, and I really want to make sure that it's a rich and full experience for you all. So, is there a burning question, Byron?
I really enjoyed your description about the mind, the trickiness of the mind, and how it captures the desire to want to live fully. And I was interested in, it's a question around if that inner work is happening. I'm wondering about how we work or respond to a world that also almost colludes with the mind, so that people around you actually, you might let go of turning to yourself, but everyone around is actually saying the words for your mind, and you're constantly surrounded by that, and how that's, how to work with that as well.
I think that's a really important question that everyone is confronting. In other words, you can say the world or the collective carries this kind of alienation from body and spirit and earth. And so the thinking, the behaviors, the communication, so much of it reinforces this separative thinking. And you're asking, well, what do I do in the face of that? It's really the same work, I think. As this communication is, there's different dimensions to it. As this is being given to me, communicated to me, transmitted to me, in all the various ways and mediums in which it comes, I want to be sensitive to it. I want to allow the energy to come to me to see, am I counter-judging that? Is my mind active in filtering the actual essential communication that's coming out? Because there is an essential communication, it's just distorted. It's just distorted through the particular formation of the thinking in the mind and everything that's carried to it. So I want to be sensitive to how it's coming into me. Am I reacting to it, or am I letting it in? Am I being vulnerable to whatever's being sent to me? And then the inner work of staying as present as I can, owning whatever, recognizing my own reactive, evaluative thinking, staying open and vulnerable to the defensive posture at first, and then maybe with enough staying there, something relaxes and I can actually feel some undefended feeling, vulnerable state with respect to sensation. I stay alive to my body vibrating with what's been said to me. So this whole inner cultivation. But it's also in relationship. So I don't want to ignore the individual who's giving me their life force. So the principle in nonviolent communication is alive here, reframed in the context that I'm speaking about. Is everybody is only and always expressing their need. Can I feel that? Can I sense the life force? Can I sense that something matters to this person? Hear for what matters to them through their thinking. Can I feel their humanity, that something does matter? And then that's the part of it that helps me to declutter my own internal clutter that doesn't allow me to hear them. So these are just some of the dynamics that I can do. Is that helpful to hear that? Okay. One more.
It follows on for me from what Baron's just asked. And it's to do with how are our individual and the collective mind educated? So, and I think I'm using educated rather than indoctrinated or taught, because it feels like whether it's our own or whether it's the more collective one, somehow it's lost track of things, and there are things we need to know and understand. So how is the mind, maybe it's just doing the process that you are guiding us through anyway. But
it sounds like you're making a distinction between there are things we need to know and understand, and the narrative information that I overlay onto that world that I want to understand.
Yeah, for me there's something fundamental understanding that we do create this world that we're reacting to and then think it's real. And if we don't understand that, we almost haven't started.
So it's that kind of self-understanding you're talking about.
But it's our collective mind as well as our individual minds. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if this answers your question, but when I've pondered this, there is a feedback loop that happens. That I'm immersed in the collective, and then how I take that in is it goes into the pool of my own individual narrative and belief and views, etc. And then if there are enough individuals that then continue to give it out into the collective, we just continue to reinforce that pattern. So it's a self-reinforcing pattern of individual thinking in that separated, analytical, judging way, dominating way. And the more we do this as individuals, the more we reinforce the collective. So unless we break that pattern, then it's going to continue to occur in the collective and it's in us as individuals. So.
Yeah, it's a big subject. Yeah. And I think for me, I was just thinking as you were saying that, like the idea with TM, that a small group who actually have that consciousness can actually change what's around.
Yeah.
And so it feels like the same thing. Those of us that begin to develop that does shift what's around us.
I think there's many different dimensions of this. I can focus my attention and energy into helping to shift the consciousness of the collective to a certain value around awareness of the environment, awareness of those people who have been marginalized, to include them more in life, etc., all of these values. I can take direct action to try to support the collective, and that's helpful because that has an effect on my individual value and view. So it depends on, I want to work with both arenas. I want to address the collective and my individuality. I think I'd like to pause here because I'm going to work with someone to demonstrate a little bit about guiding an individual through this process of self-recognition, self-responsible interior experience.